Howdy folks, Craig here on the third floor. We're going to learn how to paint up some bases using kind of a lava base as well as an ice base. And learn how to mask different areas using some masking putty. We're going to be taking advantage of the bases that our friends over at Gadzooks Gaming sent to us. If you haven't seen the unboxing of those bases and the other goodies they sent us, you can see the link for that video here in the description. But these are some great sculpts that these bases are, but these techniques, these painting techniques that I'll be showing really can be used for any type of bases. If you want to have a either a cold ice base or hot lava. Okay, let's get out our brushes.
The first thing we're going to need to do is kind of get everything together. So let's take these bases and get them off their sprues. I'm using the hobby cutters from Games and Gear. I really enjoy how the flat edge on them, they give good leverage, so I'm a big fan. This is the mold line remover from Citadel. I use it to clear all my mold lines. Just like everything from Citadel, it's a little pricey, but it does the job. I found it to be far more effective than using a hobby knife. And our glue. So I use this exclusively for when I'm anything that doesn't require plastic glue, and that's the Ultra Gel Control from Loctite. It's a gel type super glue. And we'll go ahead and get this little guy on his base. All right, whoop, there we go. Okay, now for the red base, which we're going to make into a lava base with clear red crystals. Again, get it cleaned off. And get some glue down. I'm going to probably over glue this just a little bit, but that's all right. The majority of this base is going to be primed over. We're only going to leave the clear areas for the crystals. But for the blue base, the ice base, it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to use the titanium white from Old Holland. It's the extra opaque. And I'm going to be leaving the crevices as kind of ice. And they're transparent with a blue tint, so I don't want them to be tinting down to black. So we're going to take this titanium white, which has great coverage, and I'm just going to paint the base white. So that way when the blue tint comes over it, we should get a nice light blue effect from it. Get it off, get it cleaned, we'll get it glued, and then just make sure that where I have the kind of ice stream is going to be covered, covering over the white, so it comes through as kind of a bluish hue. So this PK Pro putty is something that I've really fallen in love with. It is perfect for irregular shaped stuff that you want to mask. Masking with tape is great for flat areas or for patterns. Whereas this stuff is what I have had the most success with masking irregular shapes like these crystals. The key with this stuff is it's putty that sticks to itself. You can go pretty thin with it, and it will still block out the painting, but as you'll notice, it's real easy to wrap around irregular shapes. Now the only trick here is when you're using this putty, and this is a good thing, not a bad thing, is it's going to not stick to what you're putting it on. So it's not sticking to the base here, but it sticks to itself. So you almost have to wrap it like a blanket around the areas, making sure that you don't have edges and things just kind of hanging out there, because they're going to peel away from what you're trying to mask. But if you focus on it masking and touching itself, the stuff works great. So, always looking to make sure you got everything you want covered. Now this ice base is a little bit different, because not only are we going to do the crystals, but I want to mask off where we're going to have our little ice streams. So we go kind of a thinned, tube sausage, and I'm going to press it into where I want the ice to show through to the white that I painted under it. This is a little bit tricky because, again, it's not going to stick. It's only going to stick to itself, so I kind of have to gently press it down to the masked area and just kind of play with it. It wants to peel away. It wants to come up off of it. So this just takes a little bit of kind Combination of just determination and practice. I'm just using a sculpting tool to kind of help me get it there. You can see it lifted right off on my finger. That's okay. Just take it back up and put it back down again. And like I said, with some practice, you'll have no trouble getting good with this stuff. So if you're doing any kind of airbrushing or masking off areas for priming, I highly recommend this product. This is tricky because there's a small kind of island in between the streams. And then now we start working on the crystals, and things are a lot easier here. And you'll notice I've connected the masking from the crystals to the stream itself, and that'll help keep the stream where I want it to be. Because we painted the white under it, it's going to really give us kind of a neat ice effect. And we don't need to mask the smaller base that we're going to do, the opaque one, because we're going to be priming that entire thing. All right, that looks good. All right, we're all primed up. I primed the bases gray, and now it's just a matter of taking off the putty. Obviously, there's no putty on this smaller one, so nothing to take off there. We just peel away the putty here. Because it doesn't stick to the object, it comes just right off. You either do it with your hands, or you see here I'm taking just a little wood dowel and doing it. And really happy with how that ice effect came off on the streams there by putting the white under it. And we'll take it off the red one. All right, and here's the neatest thing. So this has all been used and primed. We just keep squeezing and mixing it. All the prime just disappears. Put it right back into the container, and that can be reused. So one of these containers is going to last you forever. Yeah, this is a really nice effect. These bases are cool. It'll look even better once we get some painting in there and get things contrasted. All right. So I'm going to use a finisher brush from Gadzooks Gaming, and let's go ahead and kind of mask off the areas that we want to be bright. So we're going to use that Old Holland titanium white again. And what I'm going to do is use that to kind of pre-shade, for lack of a better word. And the areas that are going to end up being bright on these bases, I'm putting down a white base to then paint over, so that the colors that I end up using aren't going to be fighting the gray tone. So we're going to get it, for this base, it's going to have some red lava in those between the stones and the creases there. So we'll go ahead and paint off not only the where the lava is going to be, but I'm going to be going with kind of a green crystal, and I want that to be a higher tone as well. And I don't have to be real precise here, because literally everything I'm painting right now is going to get painted over. I'm just undercoating. Even thin, that titanium white usually covers whatever you need covered just in one coat. You get the lava areas and the crystals. And again, you notice I'm being a little sloppy because everything's going to get painted over anyway. We need to do it for what's going to be lava here as well. On the red base. We're not going to have to do the blue base because there's going to be just the see-through translucent effect there. Okay, now we're going to use Citadel's Eshin Gray, and we're going to bring down the gray tone on the stone areas. This is a nice cold gray. It's darker, but not anywhere near black. And we're just going to base coat all the stone areas with it. Some flow improver. You'll notice I put my flow improver separate, and then I mix as I paint. Load up the brush, and then we are just covering all of these stone area with this Eshin Gray. And at the end, ultimately only the deepest recesses in the sculpt are going to be this color gray, because we're going to be brushing over it with lighter shades of gray to kind of give it some depth. But again, this gives, you'll notice the tonal contrast I'm getting between the white areas that I've painted for the lava and then the gray stone. The lava is going to be, you know, warm reds and oranges and yellows, whereas the stone, I want to keep it a cold gray. And then last but not least, we do the same thing here on the ice base. Alright, so we get an old Citadel dry brush, one of the old red line from who knows how old this thing is, but now we're going to use Citadel's Dawnstone, which is kind of the next step up. It's a little bit of a brighter gray. And we're going to be dry brushing this, but it's almost an overbrush. The majority of the stone is going to get covered by this color, and only the deepest recesses we're going to leave that Eshin Gray. So I, get some paint, I take most of it off from the paper towel, and then we just take advantage of the natural sculpted areas, just lightly brush it, and I'm going to be focusing mostly on the edges. I want those edges to end up being the brightest areas, whereas the interiors will be the interiors, and the deeper parts will keep that, some of that Eshin Gray behind. One of the few times you'll ever see me paint directly from the pot is when I dry brush. Really, I only dry brush mostly for bases and terrain, but dry brushing is a great technique. One of those magical things that can make you look better than you are. So just doing the same thing on the red base. We're starting to see some of that texture now coming through where the Eshin is being left behind, and we're overbrushing on the okay. Again, you'll notice I'm focusing on the edges. The edges where the stone is meeting either the outside of the base or where it's hitting the stream. And obviously being careful. Now, next step up is the Administratum Gray from Citadel. As we're getting closer to white, you'll notice it's still a cold color, which just means it doesn't have any reds or browns in it. It's got more whites and blues. And there's no transparent areas on this base, so this is not going to take long at all. Just because I don't have to be super careful. If a little bit of that Administratum Gray gets on some of the white, that's not a big deal because it's such a bright color. You really start to see this texture again of the stone. And again, you see how I'm really focusing on the edges. With this guy, I just need to be careful that I'm not, hitting the transparent crystals. And if I do, I can just quickly wipe it off with a little bit of saliva off my thumb. And don't be afraid to, go back over it if you need to. So if you, look at it and dry brush it and set it down and decide that some areas aren't as bright as you wanted them to be, you can, always do it again. Last but not least, I'm going to bring in some white. This is the Ceramite White from Citadel. It's a base color. It's got some pretty decent opaqueness. And you'll notice I'm going to just mix it with some of the gray I've already taken off the brush onto the paper towel. And this just gives me a next step up gray as opposed to a pure white. So almost mixing it on the paper towel. And here, this is going to be a very light dry brush. Again, focused on just the upper areas, but really focus on the edges. We're going to be trying to do kind of a glow effect off of this lava, and having bright edging is going to really help sell that effect. Don't want to go too far because we don't want these to look like white stones. I want them to still look like, a cold gray stone. All right, let's do some actual painting. This is Citadel's Wild Rider Red. It's a pretty decent orange red. And this is, I'll use the 0 from Artis Opus Series S. And I still have some Flow Improver still from the last painting I did on the palette, so we'll use that to help dilute and mix the Wild Rider Red. And this is going to be for the lava on the two bases here. And here I'm going in and I'm now covering everything I painted white before. And I'm hitting not only the actual crevices themselves, but putting a little bit of red on the edges, kind of, but mostly just keeping it on the flat areas. The other bonus about the white is, as you're painting, the white makes it real easy to see if you've missed any areas because it stands out. All right, now we're going to use some glaze. This is the Bloodletter from Citadel. And you can take this directly from the pot. It's already, very diluted. We're going to use the 000 from Artis Opus. And here I'm just going to try to bring down the edges of this orange and give it a little bit more of a red tint. So where the orange is hitting the stone, I'm just glazing it down just a little bit, making it a bit of a darker hue. And what it really does is it makes the orange that I don't glaze over a little bit brighter. We're going to go back to this Bloodletter at the end when we try to kind of give that glow effect. But for now, I just wanted to bring down some of that orange. All right, so now a much brighter orange, the Fire Dragon Bright from Citadel. And the way lava works is it gets brighter the hotter it is. So towards the middle, it's going to get brighter. So now I'm just going to fill in and just make the inner parts this brighter orange. And because I've thinned it down a little bit, it's not completely opaque, so it might take a few coats. But the thinner paint allows it to blend in with the Wild Rider Red a little bit more. We're already starting to see it kind of give that feeling of hot glow. So you see I'm leaving a decent amount of that Wild Rider Red behind. Now we're going to go up even further, this time using a yellow which is a huge step up. Uses the flash, gets yellow. It's a nice bright yellow. And I'm going to be basically painting this as a line. So in the innermost areas, and if it's a real thin area, I may, do more dashes than a line, because this is going to be showing us really some of the hottest areas. And because I've thinned it down again, it's blending real nicely already right into the orange. See how I just kind of did dashes there, leaving some orange behind. Starting to come together now. Same thing on the larger base. All right. Now let's take a little bit of that white that we had already on the palette, mix it with some of that yellow to get an even brighter yellow. Now I'm just putting, essentially dots, mostly in the thicker areas where there's room for it. Not a pure white, it's a white, or not a, yeah, it's a yellow that I've mixed with the white. This is when you really start to sell it. You see I'm just basically putting down dots and dashes. As I highlight up, my areas get smaller. All right, so now we're going to try to get some glow going. So we're going to go back to that bloodletter glaze from Citadel. A little bit on the palette. And now I want to tint. I want to tint the edges where we can see the kind of the glow coming from. And because of my dry brush focus, those edges are a lighter tone already from the way I dry brushed. So now I'm essentially staining them to give a kind of a translucent reddish glow. This is really subtle. I'm not overdoing it to the point when you look at it, you may not even notice it, but it will help sell kind of that glow effect, even if you don't register that the edges have been tinted red. Right, so let's paint some crystals on the other one. This is Moot Green, a nice bright green from Citadel. And then the Artis Opus 0. This is going to be my base coat for the crystals on the small base. And I'm going green for like a Necron crystal or a Soul Stone. For Malifaux, I've always thought they were green for some reason in my head. And because we painted it white, first, we get a nice bright green. And to make these vivid, I'll vary the coverage a little bit. Some areas I'll allow more white to show through, even though I'm covering the whole thing in green. Some places I'll go over more than once to intensify the green and bring down the white. It's looking good. All right, right, so now we're going to use some of these floor colors from Green Stuff World, both the yellow and the lime. So I'm going to take some of the white and mix it with these fluorescent colors, and basically tinting the white with the fluorescent color. I want the glow for these crystals to come from the inside and the bottom. So I'm just using the yellows and the greens mixed with the white. You see how I'm kind of focusing, almost like I did with the lava, on the inner parts and the lower parts. This effect is real subtle, but it makes those crystals look a little bit deeper, almost translucent. Because they're fluorescent paints, they've got a real nice vivid brightness to them. Yeah, that's good. All right, let's finish these off with some Vallejo black. I believe all base rims should be black. I'm not into the colored base rims. So we're just going to take a big brush. I'm using the utility brush from Gadzooks. You'll notice also I've got a glove on. It's because I have not put a dull coat on these yet. So I don't want my hands to mess up the paint job at all. So medical gloves help with that. Now we're just covering the base in black around the rims. This ultimately will make the rest of the base stand out nicely. The Vallejo black has a kind of a nice matte finish to it too, which is good. So do the same thing to the small base. It's good. And then the crystal base. Here I've got to be a little bit careful because again I don't want to hit any of the fluorescent parts. All right. So the lava bases are basically done. The last thing I wanted to do is put a little kind of a frost effect on this ice base. I'm using Citadel Snow, which I think works great for kind of a frost effect. I don't like it for snow. So I'm going to use some of the Loctite glue again, and just hit a couple spots where I want kind of a frost effect. And this glue dries super clear, which is what I want. Because it's a gel, it's going to give me a little bit of height to this frosted area. And then it's just like any kind of flock. I just sprinkle it on. Cover the glue. And in a second, when I dust this off, you'll see what I mean by it having really less of a snow effect and more of a frosted, like a frost, you know, there's a bit of frost on the stone, which is what I was going for. All right, these guys are done. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, and as well as we're at Third Floor Wars on Twitter. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care.